Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate you coming in. As you come in, please say hello and let us know where you're coming in from. Coach Stephen, how are you doing today?
Well, I'm doing very well. It's really nice to see you. I'll tell you one thing I've found recently is a few people say, "Oh, you look really well," to me, and then some people say, "Oh, you don't look so well today." And I've realised it's because I'm trying to do live streams and videos across the globe. So I start really early, like 7 o'clock in the morning, and that's when people say, "Oh, you look really bright-eyed and bushy-tailed." But if I've got people that see me at the end of the evening, like last night, there was a Make America Healthy Again, finishing at 11 o'clock at night. I've started at 7 in the morning and I've ended at 11 at night. By 11 at night, I've been literally sitting in front of the screen doing all the things we're not supposed to do and that are really bad for your health. And
Right.
my face tells the story of not being outside, not being in the sun. Absolutely tells it. So I think, on a really surface, sort of superficial level, I think I'm really glad to be here at 9 o'clock in the morning. So what's the time where you are?
It's 5 p.m.
5
So
p.m.
yeah,
Perfect. Yeah.
So yeah, it's a good time of the day to do things, yeah. Oh, I've
I've
also
got George.
realized there's a
Go on.
new feature on StreamYard. It actually shows the comments on the screen. That's really cool. I
Is
can
it?
see it
Okay, yeah.
it's like it comes up on the screen like Twitch. Oh, that's cool.
And there's a weird thing there because George Goodenough, 9 o'clock tonight, I'm interviewing George. And there he
Oh,
is.
really?
Checking. Yeah, absolutely. So
Oh, cool. So weird thing is, Jeannie's here. How you going, Jeannie? And
g'day.
George. And they were both in a live stream with me this morning.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Toys from T-Bear. How you doing? Oh,
3
wow.
a.m.
3 a.m. Thank you. Thanks for joining us. Hi, Ken. How you doing? So thank you everyone for being here. When you come in, whether you're on my channel or Coach Stephen's channel, please smash the like button. Smashing the like button really helps out because it will get more people in because it tells YouTube, oh, people like this, push it out. So if you've got a question.
Let me ask you. I've got
sorry.
a question. Have you got over 100,000 subscribers yet?
Yes.
Yeah.
Just passed it on Monday. Yeah.
Excellent. Yes. So where are you going to put your little silver plaque?
I'm not sure. I can't stick it behind me because the green thing's a curtain, and it'll pull the foam off the wall on the other side. So yeah, I don't know. I'll just hold it with me all the time.
Yes. Get a chain and put it around your neck.
Well, they've made it smaller now, so I can maybe do that.
Yes. Yeah. Dr. Abs recently got one, and I was able to get my hands on it. I mean, I'm years away from getting that. I think I'm at about 38,000 subscribers. But yeah, I was quite surprised that it's quite light, actually.
Right.
So,
yeah. When you see it on other people's unboxing videos and whatever, it's like, oh, that looks really sturdy and heavy, and but when you actually touch it, it's probably more like I don't know. Feels just my image is it's like balsa wood with some tinfoil around it or something.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, so just for everyone watching, if you've got any questions throughout today, please put a Q in the chat and we'll get to those. But Coach Stephen, we had discussed before a topic that has been going around a little bit in the carnivore community recently called, I think it's insulin suppression.
Well, it's, to be more broad, people are worried about allegedly low insulin, and just to say it's one of those things I'm hearing a lot because I do a lot of blood work, and low and high in this space are sort of quite emotive terms and often incorrect. So, for instance, just to take it away from insulin, but just talk about bloods in general, many people say, "Oh, I've got low T3." Well, you haven't got low T3, you've got appropriate T3 because it's a physiological adaptation. In basic terms, you need more T3 when you eat carbohydrates because T3 is a factor in glycolysis. So the breakdown of carbohydrates, T3 takes pyruvate, moves it across the mitochondrial membrane. So you need more. So when people say low T3, no, it's appropriate. If you have symptoms, low T3, fatigue, unexplained weight changes, irritability, bad mood, then maybe it is something to look at. But just looking at the number is the wrong thing to do. And to do some joined up thinking is always the best thing to do. And there's so many examples of that as well. Vitamin C, we don't need so much vitamin C. So when someone says they're low on vitamin C, because they've looked at a reference range or a number, they're probably not low in vitamin C. And insulin is another one where people say, oh, it seems to be really low now. And might be subclinical according to the range. But if you're not ending up as a mass of fluid on the floor, you've still got muscles and bones and you're feeling great, that you've probably got an appropriate level of insulin. And that's the thing that we need to get back to, is talking about symptoms rather than being driven by numbers, especially the one I always bang on about, the A1C.
Right.
Which is so unreliable. If you're looking at the A1C and thinking, well, my blood glucose is going up a bit, the average is going up, and just to give some context, how it started, this was 6 years ago, where really had a lot of carnivore clients coming in that were reversing their type 2 diabetes, but absolutely still obsessed with the blood glucose and wearing the monitors. Some people were in different companies, one on one, arm one on another, finger pricking and all that. And absolutely obsessed with the data. And I don't want people feeling like that. They shouldn't be obsessed with the data. But the good thing was the data, to steal a Dave Feldman sort of type of quote, the data is the data is the data. So we've got your blood, you've got the numbers. So what can we do with it? Well, if you're being told by your continual glucose monitor that your average blood glucose is, just to make the sums really easy, 100 milligrams per deciliter, or 5.5 millimoles per litre if you're in Europe. And it shows you that all the time as an average, maybe, fluctuating, use that 100, say 105, 95, 105, 95, 105, 95. Your average is 100. And then you get an HbA1c, or an A1C, some people call it, which is allegedly your average blood glucose, and let's say it's 120, you'd be scratching your head saying, well, this doesn't make any sense. So I have banged on about this for quite a while, and there's many reasons why your blood glucose can rise in a way that worries you, but you need to understand the A1C, or the HbA1c, is an unreliable marker because it factors in the life of the red blood cell. Right. So if your red blood cell dies too soon, simply as a calculation where it's looking at the result from the lab, then it multiplies it by 120 days, which is the assumption, and it gives you a number. So if you're hemolytic anemic, and we were always told this when I first did phlebotomy and we did our private blood testing, if someone had a really low A1C, you couldn't say to them, oh, you're not diabetic. You have to test them for hemolytic anemia, because the red blood cell life, it dying sooner, will give you an artificially low reading. You might still be still diabetic, because what is diabetes mellitus? Well, that's that actual term is a mixture of Greek and Latin, and it means passing through. Sorry to swear here. Honey flavored piss, right? That's what it means. All right. So, and that makes sense because the symptoms of diabetes are drinking too much fluid and urinating a lot. Well, that's the body being really clever. That's the body saying, well, you've got too much sugar, let's dilute it and let's excrete it. So if we get back to the basics, which is diabetes is the concentration of glucose in your blood, having your CGMs and having your finger pricking is measuring that. HbA1c is not. It's measuring the glycation of hemoglobin in a red blood cell. And as I say, if your red blood cells live too short, then you get this artificially low reading. So you can get an artificially high reading if your red blood cells live longer. And that can be proven with a thing called the reticulocyte count. So,
Right.
sorry, Dave. Go on.
No, I just think it's really interesting, like, because when I look at the way things are done, often like this calculation of the HbA1c, if we were to do this in an IT environment, if we're trying to work out how to write some code and we're doing an estimation like that, it would just be like no one would take it seriously, like if it was just an estimate. But it's one of these things that just, it's a common sense thing. It gets repeated enough and people just believe that's the standard. And so
Absolutely.
I guess it's the same with that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that is the big problem, because people just believe that it is a reliable number when it isn't. And that's one of the things I was going to say was, if you start to change your behavior based on the HbA1c or the A1C, then you're doing it for the wrong reason. So we need to get back to the blood glucose. I mean, that's the thing I was trying to get at. So, or the blood glucose concentration is key. So once we realize that the A1C is unreliable, and by the way, labs know this, and we have labs looking at what's called the HbA1c, which is the adjusted A1C based on the life of the red blood cells. So we know that. So we know that's an actual thing. But when we talk about what those words mean, so hemoglobin is in the red blood cell. In fact, when you look at the red blood cell, just so people know how amazing the body is, we make 2.5 million red blood cells a second. We recycle 2.5 million red blood cells a second. Right, so in every red blood cell, about 97% of it is hemoglobin. There's about 284 hemoglobins, 284 million hemoglobins in a red blood cell. So when we talk about glycation and we talk about that particular number, we're only looking at the glucose that is bonding to the protein. So that happens because there's the way glucose is made up. There's what's called a carbonyl group, and the oxygen hydrogen loves attaching itself to nitrogen, which is in the protein. And the reason I'm saying that is because that's a bond that is irreversible. And that's important because, like, ketones can bond to hemoglobin, but it's such a weak bond, it doesn't do that. It reverses and stops doing that. So we know it's a good measure of glucose bonding. That's a proper word, not sticking, really, bonding to hemoglobin. But it doesn't just bond to hemoglobin. It bonds to everything. So when we talk about glycation, and we're trying to game the number, we're trying to bring the A1C down. And this is where the thinking you've got low insulin doesn't make any sense by adding carbs back. The glycation is also indicating how much glycation there is in albumin, the thing that transports things around your body in the blood. Collagen, which is structural. Immunoglobulins, which is obviously your antibodies. So that glycation is going to that protein, and you haven't got albumin, you've got deranged albumin, you've got deranged collagen, you've got deranged immunoglobulins, you've got deranged hemoglobin. Now, sorry to get all technical, but that's really important, because if your resolution is to add glucose back to game a number that is unreliable, then you're in big trouble, because what you're doing is you're increasing glycation. Simple as that. So if someone says 15 grams of carbs, which is 3 times as much carbohydrate as you want in your bloodstream at any one time, it's only 15 grams. No, that's 3 times more glycation than your body wants as well. So firstly, we're trying to game a number which is irrelevant. Secondly, we're saying the fix, and it's ridiculous when you think about it. The fix to work on your blood glucose concentration is to introduce glucose. is ridiculous. So the other way of looking at it is, well, no, it's not to do that. It's to increase insulin. Well, insulin is only released in respect to the concentration of glucose in your blood. So you're going to get a response from insulin it will go higher, but all you're doing is actually increasing your glycation, increasing the workload on your body, and gaming the A1C. You're bringing that number down. It's artificial. That's the thing. So you shouldn't be doing that. You should be looking at the fact that the insulin is appropriate.
So, the only argument I could ever see for like introducing lots and lots of glucose to control something, right, would be that we've damaged ourselves so much throughout our lives that we have to do something that's kind of damaging to balance things out, because we would never have had this problem a long time ago where processed food wasn't available and fruit wasn't always in season and things like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's only now that we have that problem. So it does, like, introducing glucose for anything doesn't really pass the smell test.
It doesn't, does it? And that's the thing. I'm trying to give people many different ways of looking at this. So the biggest point for me is gaming numbers, right? So let's do a really broad thing where people say, "Oh, my blood glucose has gone up slightly," and it's because I've got low insulin. Well, there are 14 GLUT transporters or glucose transporters, which is why they're called GLUT. So GLUT4, the glucose transporter 4, is the one that people worry about because they think that is insulin dependent, and that's the only way it gets glucose into the cell. Well, there's 5 ways that GLUT4 gets glucose into the cell. Only one is insulin dependent. The other is all down to so this explains exercise. One is mechanical stress. When you contract your muscles, the cells are signaled to that mechanical change, lower calcium levels, supply of energy. There's loads of things that will make the GLUT4 translocate to the cell membrane and allow glucose into the cell without insulin. And the point I'm getting at is there are 14 GLUT transporters. GLUT1, which is a red blood cell, that gets glucose into the cell without insulin. 13 transporters do not require insulin at all. So our body is absolutely bathed in working what's called the concentration gradient, which is how much glucose is in your blood and how much therefore will go into your cells. You don't need insulin for all of those things. So some people think, well, my blood glucose has gone up from, let's say, 100 milligrams per deciliter to 110. So that's like 1 teaspoon of sugar in 5 liters of blood,
right,
to 1 teaspoon and 1/10 of a teaspoon. So if you had 5 liters of blood in front of you and you did a pipette of 5 grams, and then you did a pipette of another gram, you think, well, that's not that much.
Right.
So again, are the numbers, the 100 milligrams per deciliter, appropriate for people with a high carbohydrate diet? Yes, because that's what all these numbers have been worked out on. Somebody eating 45 to 65% carbohydrates. Maybe 110 isn't even a problem. All right, I think over about 180 milligrams per deciliter, that's where the kidneys does struggle to stop getting glucose going into the urine. So maybe that would be it. But if you've gone up to 110, I wouldn't feel that's a particular problem. Is that down to the fact that, yes, you've got low insulin, but the body is now working on concentration gradients, which is really important. You see, many people don't look at the body holistically. So I always use this when people don't really understand glucose concentration. You've got a can of Coke and another can of Coke, and you're an adult and you drink your can of Coke and you give your other one to a little 10-year-old. They've got 3 liters of blood. You've just given yourself 9 teaspoons. And you thought, it's a can of Coke, that's all right. How can that hurt my kid? Well, you've nearly given them double the concentration that you've got. So you've got your 9 teaspoons in 5 liters of blood. They've got 9 teaspoons of sugar in 3 liters of blood. You've given them a really hard day.
That's why they start doing head spins.
Yeah, exactly. You've got it. See, the reason I want to talk like this is because I want people to make the joined up common sense connections. You made it straight away. Of course they're hyperactive. Of course. their body is absolutely buzzing with more sugar than you as an adult have. And also, you know, they're already in a sort of growth spurt state anyway. So anyway,
Right.
they
Yeah.
want to find out things even quicker and do things even quicker.
So we've had quite a few questions come through, and I want to get to the questions, but just beforehand, like this has been one of the most frustrating things about my journey on carnivore, and just watching doctors arguing on Twitter and whatever, you know, is looking at the fact that there no one seems to, like, you're taking nuance into account, like you're considering all the nuance, as you mentioned before. You've got to take a holistic view of the body, right? But often when there's doctors and researchers are just throwing out a study and saying, well, this study says this, so that's why you shouldn't have high levels of saturated fat in your diet and all this kind of thing, you know, they're just, no one's thinking about the overall context. They're all thinking about just that one thing, that one number. And the body just doesn't work like that.
It doesn't, no. And that's the thing. See, I love that you immediately got my blood concentration example straight away. You know, you got that straight away. And I think that's the thing. We've got to look at things in a holistic manner. I mean, when we get bloods in, and again, I'm going to go very broad now. People can come in with a perfect set of bloods, and I'll say, how do you feel? And they'll say, absolutely terrible. Absolutely awful. And they say, but I've been to my doctor and they said there's nothing wrong with me, because they've used the bloods. That's
right.
it.
And
You know?
they are within range for everything, which is based on the average of a sick population.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're eating, you know, it's like me looking at my 100-meter sprinting time. I'm 61, and then going into the gym and looking at all the best times and being really demoralized, because I'm looking at all these people with really faster times than me. And then, you know, the manager comes over and says, oh, by the way, you're looking at the top 10 athletes in the whole of, you know, Kent or wherever, and they're all under 20. I'm like, right. Where's the old farts list then? Because I'm over 60. Right. So I go and look at my old farts list, and hey, I'm not doing too bad. But that's what's happening. You see, I'm looking at the wrong reference ranges and assuming there's something up with me. When I find the right ranges, I'm like, that's what I should be doing. In fact, I'm at the top end. So we've got to look at bloods more holistically. We've got to look at common sense as well. Go back to basics. You know, when I first started, it's only 15 years ago when I started in obesity and diabetes. You know, it was all more driven by symptoms, and kids being diabetic was really rare. We still had the term late onset diabetes. So kids tended to be type 1 because they weren't affected by seed oils and, you know, diet. And you became diabetic when you was an adult because you were stupid and you were eating lots of carbs in the past. That those phrases have gone. You know, it's now diabetes type 2, type 1, you know, other types as well, obviously.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's only recently that there has been a non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. No, like it was just fatty liver disease before, because it was the disease of alcoholics, right?
Yes.
And now it's the disease of children, but they can't call it, like, it's not an alcoholic problem now. Yeah. So we've got some questions here. We've got one from Helen Hot Stuff. Hello, gents. I went to give blood last week, but hemoglobin was 109, so not allowed. Is that Hg hemoglobin?
That's hemoglobin.
They suggest taking iron and upping vitamin C. Is this good advice? Carney 10 months.
Taking iron and upping vitamin C. Right. Well, let's explain that bit first, why that advice is not really relevant if you're carnivore. Okay. So why are they saying that? Well, when you eat plants, you get what's called non-heme iron. So that's Fe3 plus. Sorry to be technical, but it makes sense when we get to the whole nub of this. But that's not bioavailable. That's non-heme iron, Fe3 plus. We want Fe2 plus reduction in the charge there, which is ferrous. Right. When you eat animal proteins, you get heme iron direct. Why am I saying this? Because vitamin C ferroreductase is the enzyme, and there's a clue in the name there, that converts non-heme iron to heme iron. So when you're eating iron from plants, you do need a lot of vitamin C, because without vitamin C, you can't reduce non-heme iron to heme iron. So if you've got an Hg value of 109, you say, is that right? 109? I'm trying to find the question. Oh, it's on the screen. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yes. You probably do need more iron, but the way you're eating probably should be producing enough iron for you. So I don't know enough about Helen Hot stuff. It's a great name, by the way. 10 months carnivore. Don't know how much you're eating. Maybe you're under eating, but you should be able to get enough iron from the way you're eating. Let's go a little bit further then. So it could be the absorption of the iron. You could be eating enough via your food. Now, this is where the recycling of the red blood cells comes back into it as well, because incidentally, 90% of your iron at any time is not from food. It's coming from the recycling of the hemoglobin in the red blood cell. So this is the other thing. You might have an appropriate level of iron, but that's not reflected in the blood testing. But if you want to increase your iron, yes, you could take an iron supplement, which could game the number if you want to give blood. You could look at other tests before you go in, because there could be some things that are, going wrong. So yes, it could be an absorption period issue. It could be a heavy period. That could be another thing, because that's one of the things people do therapeutic blood donation. That lowers your iron. The other way that you lose a lot of iron is if you have heavy periods as well. So that could be it. I wouldn't up the vitamin C unless you're still reliant on veggies, which would help with that conversion. But I would definitely look at basically looking at things like organ meats, if you want to do that. A little bit of organ meat, so that would be good. I'm trying to think of other things you could do. Beef kidney, probably. Lamb's liver, beef liver, shellfish, probably all better than iron supplements.
So can I just ask, when you were talking about taking the iron supplements, you said you could use the supplements to game the number. Does that means if you can get a heme iron supplement, if you're taking that, then it's not actually absorbing properly anyway?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't recommend doing that. I'm just saying that's one of the things that people do, this reductive thinking, which is take a supplement, gain the number, give the blood. But actually, I'd rather get to why is your hemoglobin at 109? It's a root cause thing. Because all they're saying is you're low in iron, let's up it. Well, why do you need to up it when you're carnivore, which is, as we all know, is pretty iron rich, especially the fact it's heme bioavailable. And this is the problem with me doing things like this, is because I don't do the quick fix, because my mind doesn't work like that. You said about being an engineer, if you're an engineer and the question is, is the glass half full or is it half empty? I'm like, why have you got the glass too big?
Right.
So you just look at a different question to what other people are thinking.
Yeah. And ultimately, you've got to come down to what's the root cause, right?
Exactly. So why is it 109? And is 109 a problem? Are you having fatigue? Do you have cold hands, cold feet, brittle nails? Do you tolerate exercise? Not as well. See, these are all the actual questions you need to ask with that one simple question. And Helen, thank you for the question. And I'm not, ripping into you over the question. It's just that's what we do now. We've got a number. It's too low. Here's a thing that will push it up. Right.
Right.
Okay. Is that the best thing to do, or is it better to say, why is it there? I think it's possibly, the fact she's put not menopausal may be indicating politely that she has, a menstrual flow that outpaces that dietary intake. Maybe absorption issues, which could be down to things like, we're going back to red blood cell formation, B12 utilization. You could do a methylmalonic acid test to see if your B12 is getting to where it should be. So it's a very poor test, the hemoglobin test. When you've got a low number, it's better to do what's called an MMA test, see if your B12 is actually getting to the cells. Folate is another one where you could be told it's low and it isn't. Again, this is a difference between carnivore and non-carnivore, or people that eat a lot of plants for their folate. Folate from plants is what's called a polyglutamate folate, which just means it's a folate with a glutamate attached to it. And the human body wants folate monoglutamate. Folate. So when we eat folate, we need less of it because it's already in the form that we need.
Right.
So I would, if I wanted to get to the root cause of it, I would actually go and have an MMA test, and if you want a folate one, just to prove the concept there. And there's many ways to skin a cat, basically. So hopefully that's a good answer.
Yeah, thank you for your question, Helen. So we've now got a question from Michelle. If you fast for 24 hours before a blood test, what would happen to the lipid profile and insulin?
Well, faster 24 hours, your insulin would be low, appropriately low for the environment you put it in, which is the fact that you're now probably burning body fat. That's what we would want, a low insulin environment. It's really weird because we started with talking about people trying to raise it when actually, that would lower it. Secondly, and really stick with me on this, Michelle, it wouldn't be any good to then compare your test to other tests because you've given yourself a different environment. So most blood testing is done with an 8 to 12 hour fasting happening, mainly because you've slept, then you've gone to the lab and you've gone to the blood drawer. So 24 hours will only give you a good idea about what your body looks like after 24 hours. If you want to compare it to 6 months ago, 12 months ago, if you did 24-hour fasts, then it makes sense because you can still see the trend. But then the reference ranges don't make any sense because all the reference ranges, not only do they not apply to carnivore, but they don't apply to 24-hour fasting either. They apply to people on average 8 to 12-hour fasted. So that's it. Lipid profile, your triglycerides would be substantially lower. Now, this is another thing. Let's look at the nuance of triglycerides. Sorry, Dave, you'll never get a quick answer from me. When you've got a triglyceride, you've got a glycerol backbone, and then you've got 3 fatty acids, okay? They don't measure triglycerides, they measure glycerol. So they don't tell you the quality of your triglycerides. So if you have saturated fat, your thing would look like this. It would look great, beautifully straight. If you're having a lot of unsaturated fats, you'd have a triglyceride that looks a bit like that, or even like that. So the concentration of triglycerides, you can do that test to see how good the quality of your triglycerides are, but you would be spending a lot of money. That's the problem. So anyway, to answer your question, sorry, I do blood, so it's worth mentioning. So they would be lower. Low density, low density lipoprotein, that would probably elevate slightly because you're trafficking more fat around, so you're using fat as an energy source. High density lipoprotein, I would guess, would probably stay about the same. So that's it. And obviously we're not going to get into lipid fractions, but that would be my answer.
Yeah, cheers. We've got a multi-part question here. Hang on one second. Okay, so part 1. On high blood on high blood pressure. Many people on meds to lower high blood pressure shouldn't be on those, but instead they need amino acids to control homocysteine levels. I'm assuming animal products have amino acids to lower homocysteine levels to get your blood pressure down to normal. Could someone just cut off their blood pressure meds cold turkey and take a TMG supplement?
No, we're not doctors, so we can't tell you to do that. That's something that you can do with your doctor, because the way that you're eating will naturally bring your blood pressure down over time. It's a good question. Homocysteine definitely has been proven to directly damage the endothelial cells, but that doesn't mean it's a bad player. It isn't. It's actually a good player. Homocysteine is, essential, and it goes on to make other things as well. So we're talking about antioxidants and glutathione and all that sort of stuff. So yeah. So again, we don't want to say the homocysteine levels are too high. We want to look at what's causing your blood pressure to be high. So what would be that? TMG is trimethyl glycine. So you're looking at methyl donors, basically. So this is quite a high level question. But
that's why I didn't understand most of it.
But you can never stop blood pressure medications to cold turkey, whoever you are, because you could get a rebound hypertension event, really. So you've got to taper it off. That's the proper approach. I'm assuming from the first part of the question, I can't remember the first part, but I would get your homocysteine levels tested. And I would also look at things like folate as well, because that's critical. And again, actually, an MMA test would be really good. Sorry, I don't have vested shares in these tests, but we want to see what's going on. What is causing that higher level of homocysteine if you have higher levels? And it can be a lot to do with the folate B12 pathway methylation as well. So,
because a lot of people have what's that gene? A lot of people have like
MTHFR.
Yeah, they like the gene's got several mutations, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so MT, so methylfolate reductase, is what we're talking about. So methyl is the M bit, and you need methyl donation. So as you go through, folate, B12 conversion, homocysteine, glutathione, they're constantly handing over the methyl group, which is why it's important to go through those phases, really.
Okay.
Thank you for
Okay, FX Trader, what is the most beneficial fasting time frame and how often should we fast? Do artificial sweeteners raise insulin? Ooh, I can maybe answer.
Go for it.
Oh my goodness. Oh.
Go for it. Go for it.
I think artificial sweeteners do raise insulin due to the cephalic response, I believe. And beneficial fasting time frame. I think that's maybe going to be different for each person. I would just do what feels good and then stop when it doesn't feel good. I would imagine break your fast when it's like you start feeling hungry. Your body tells you what you need to do. I would think, but what are your thoughts on that one, Stephen?
Oh, right. Sorry, I thought you were going to cover it all. Yeah, I agree with that. Yes. If you've never fasted, well, firstly, I can remember when I was high carb and doing my advanced personal training certificate and talking about fasting, and everybody in the room, because they were high carb, was like, oh, no, you've got to eat all the time. You've got to be banging those carbs in all the time. Fasting is absolutely ridiculous. How are you ever going to burn fat is beyond me. But anyway, well, I think I would start with the normal, like the 16 to 18 hour fasting. I would do that. So basically, you're asleep when you're fasting. It's not a problem then, and you try to extend it by eating earlier in the day and stopping, or extending out your breakfast. I think that would be a good thing. So maybe
mm.
start eating. If you normally eat at 8 in the morning, see if you can kick it to lunchtime. I think that's good. So many people do sort of OMAD, 1 meal a day, or 2 MAD, in a sort of shortened window of eating. So that would work, wouldn't it? So 18 hours of not eating, and you've got 6 hours of eating. So you could start at 12 o'clock midday, have another meal at 6, and be fine. So that could be a beneficial way. Now, if you want to start really eating into your body composition, that's when you get into, 1 meal a day, or so that's 24-hour fasting, and then you eat 1 meal a day. But can you get enough nutrients? That's a question there. If you've got body fat to lose, you're probably going to be fine, because you'll be so happy that the weight starts to come off. You'll be running around full of energy going, oh, this was so easy. And then I think 36 to 48 hours, you're looking at sort of autophagy, and where sort of bad proteins are all broken down and recycled, growth hormone elevation, those sort of things. If you get into that, you could do that maybe once a month, 36 to 48 hours. I think that would be pretty good. Longer than 48, I did a 72-hour fast recently, and I felt fabulous. But I think you have to exercise your fasting muscle. You have to get into it. So
you have to build up to it, right? And it's a confidence thing as well, I found. Like, because when you first start doing it, you feel like, I'm not going to be able to last 24 hours. And then after you've done that a few times, then it's like, oh, I could probably do 48 hours. And it just, builds on itself.
Yes.
So let me unmark this one. Okay. From Anthony, would stem cell therapy help with an optic nerve in the retina that has been damaged, which has caused vision issues?
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, I realized I missed out the artificial sweeteners. So, Anthony, I'll come back straight to that. But the artificial sweeteners, you're right. The cephalic response is your brain going, whoa, this is going to be sweet. So, very broad, by the way. So, something like monk fruit is natural. Stevia is natural. The body probably copes with that better than something that is, a sugar alcohol. So, anything ending like dithyritol, erythritol, the OL ending, your body doesn't work as well with that. So you're probably, the insulin response isn't the issue. It's actually more, can your body break it down? And then you do get insulin response from sucralose and aspartame and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, right, let's get back to your Dubry. Stem cell therapy help with optic nerve in the retina that's been damaged, which has caused vision issues. So my honours degree in physiology and health sciences looked at stem cells, and this is a real sort of promising area, but it's still really experimental. So there's nothing definitive in this. There's different type of stem cells as well. So I mean, I do actually use the Stem Enhance Cerule. I do have a link to that, which releases adult stem cells from the bone marrow, increases the release. So I do believe that's something that you want to encourage as you get older, which is because of years of damage. What you said earlier, I up until age 50, I ate all the wrong things. So I put myself in a deficit when it comes to the release of adult stem cells. But there are stem cells looking at what's called retinal progenitor cells and neural stem cells. So they're probably the two areas. If you want to look into it, you could also look into iPSC, which is sort of very nuanced. But yes, you're looking at neural stem cells and retinal progenitor cells. They're the main ones. And they look at getting your function back. But it's still an area where there's other things that could be causing your vision issues, glaucoma related issues, which is too much sugar, ischemic neuropathy, which is where you're not getting enough oxygen, not enough nutrient to the area. You could have some sort of trauma. You might have knocked your eye, caused an optic nerve injury that way, which is very difficult. So Yes, I think potentially it could do. I think it's in its early stages. I think diet can really help. My vision improve, my floaters went, my light sensitivity went with this way of eating. But yeah, at the moment, I haven't got enough to tell you.
Mm. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Anthony, for the question. Okay, we've got a question directly for Stephen from George. I am 60 years old. Can Stephen explain again the old way of explaining blood pressure, i.e., 100 plus age over? I'll take notes this time. I need this for an upcoming hernia op. Thanks.
Yeah, George, that's a good question. So blood pressure is dynamic and it changes day by day, minute by minute. And I was educated the other day by Dr. Abs about a wrist wearing BP monitor, blood pressure monitor, which does measures constantly in real time, only when you're still, by the way. And that's really important because if you're a weightlifter, temporarily your blood pressure will be 400 over 200 because it's a demand driven thing. And the body takes strong control of your blood pressure. We also need to know how often your heart pumps. We need your pulse rate basically as well.
Mm.
So to explain what used to happen, well, if you were 60 years old, then we would look at, in the old days, when I first started, what would your blood pressure be? Well, just rule of thumb, we don't want it at 60 years old to be over 160 systolic and diastolic to be 40 less than that. So 160 over 120 would be sort of the upper limit. And the reason for that is your arteries stiffen. Whatever way you're eating, it's just a process of aging that happens. You cannot get your arteries at 60 to be the same as when you were 20. It's just a fact.
Mm.
And when any pipe that has fluid running through it under the pressure that is exerted. So there's your artery. When your heart pumps, boom, the blood goes through it, but it exerts pressure on the wall. So that's your blood pressure. That's as simple as that, So the pressure against the arterial wall, and then when it's returning through the venous system, there is much less pressure. And in fact, actually, it's about 10% compared to the arteries, which also explains the formation of plaques are only in arteries. It's nothing to do with cholesterol. Right. So anyway, we'll get back to the question. So that's how they used to do it. Before the 1970s, that's what we did. Age plus 100, maybe age plus 90. And then in the 1970s, 1980s, that's when it was absolutely nailed on. There was the first recognition that blood pressure was age related. That came in. But in the 1990s, they said it's 140 over 90 for everybody, which is ridiculous. Because why should a 21-year-old athlete that's running 100 meters better than me have the same blood pressure? Why should a 21-year-old girl and a 74-year-old man who's overweight have the same blood pressure? So we've got it's just crazy. So these are just guidelines, and strangely enough, as the guidelines get lower and lower, it puts people into banned for medication. So
odd that, isn't it?
It's odd, yes. And there was a period which so there is a group that meet to talk about the blood pressure guidelines every 4 or 5 years. And a little while ago, I think it was 8 years ago, maybe 12 years ago, they took the rule to be 115 over 75. But there was anecdotal evidence that lots of older people in particular were fainting and getting fractures from falling and stuff like that. So then they revised them back up 4 years later. But in the document did say, this is not because of anecdotal evidence about people fainting. But why else would you put it up unless it failed? And so that was a big problem. Everything's political,
Wow.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything's to make a buck.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's it basically.
Thank you, George. So just before we go on to other questions, just let me say, FX Trader, thank you for the super chat. And also $2 Timu undies. Thank you very much. And you've got a question here I'll just put the question up. Any tips for bad backs, pain coming from arthritic, previously herniated discs and bulges?
Yeah. Right. Okay. Don't do plank. In fact, don't do plank. Anybody, don't do plank. So your core strength. So you've got your spine. I did have a skeleton here, but I haven't got it. I've got a spine. Yeah, I've got a spine. But anyway, let's not get that. Right. So your spine is at the back of your core. So that's your abs. Let's say that's your abs, and your spine is here. Let's just say, all right. And that's a bit of a pot belly there, but anyway.
That's what my ab used to look like.
so your whole core is supported by your spine. So when you do plank, it's unnatural. Your core is there to keep you standing. It's there to make you twist and bend down and go up. So if you're doing anything to work your core, and the reason I'm saying about your core is because if your core is strong, your spine has got this extra support here, stopping it from wobbling about and causing you problems. If your core is strong, your back's going to be better. So any exercise you do it standing. So if I'm sitting right now, if I do my shoulder press like this, the chair is my core. My core's doing nothing. If I'm standing, and especially if I don't do my shoulder press like this, but I do it like this, down, up. So what I'm doing is I'm making myself uneven deliberately. My core will be constantly working to make sure that I don't fall over to one side or another. Then the other thing you can do is you can then twist, which is great for all your intercostals and stuff like that. So you can do some exercises if you want. Sit-ups, no good. You don't want to do that. You don't really want to be doing sit-ups or plank. They're not great for your back. Right. So let's explain what is happening with your previously herniated and bulging discs. So you've got your vertebrae, bang, 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 and in the middle you've got this disc. Now what happens when you go to sleep, your vertebrae tend to do this, which is nothing very much at all. And the blood supply and the nutrients getting to your discs rely on negative and positive pressure. This is why when you first get up, you feel not as good as once you've cleaned your teeth, moved around, had a drink or whatever, because you've started that plumping up. So some people can be about 2 centimeters shorter when they first wake than when they've been moving around. And it's all down to that, moving around. Right. Yeah. Motion is lotion. So anyone that's sitting out there going, oh, that's why I'm all stiff in the morning. Yep. That's why you're all stiff in the morning. Really that simple. You can repair discs by giving yourself the right nutrients and not having systemic inflammatory foods. So yeah, if you're eating proteins and fats, animal proteins and fats, that's giving the body the nutrients it wants. It's not inflaming those joints. It's not inflaming the surrounding area. And motion is lotion. It's very corny, but it is true. The more you move, the better. So if you've got a bad back and you just want to lie down, oh man, I just want to, that makes total sense. You want relief from the pain. You want that pain to stop, but you're actually going to make it worse in the long run. So yeah, a lot of motion, look after your core, don't do plank, don't do sit-ups, lots of good stretching, dynamic stretching is really good, but don't overdo that either. I think walking is about the best thing you can do.
Yeah, I love walking. Yeah, walking's good for your joints, but like it's just gentle motion and keeping you upright, and it's also good for your brain. I think it's good to just relieve stress and everything. Okay, toys from T-Bear. Could the urge carnivores feel to heal others after converting be an instinctual, physical, or psychological response like lifting brain fog?
Yeah, could be.
Yeah,
could be. Yeah.
I mean, I can't speak. I'm not sure about now with people running around with their phones out as soon as someone gets into trouble. But like in the past, at least, like if you saw someone fall down, like everyone rushes to help that person, right? So I feel like it's kind of the same instinct, right? Someone says, "I'm really sick." if you've been on carnivore for 6 months and you're feeling fantastic, your first instinct is to just start talking about carnivore. Put the donut down and listen to me, kind of thing, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think, that natural urge to help people. I mean, if there's something wrong with you, if you were walking down the street and someone was carrying a load of boxes and they were really struggling and one fell off, you know, and you just walk straight past, which I do think some people would do nowadays. I mean, my urge would be like, oh, here you go. There's your box on there, or have you got far to go and I'll help you. I think that should be just a normal human instinct, I think, to help others in trouble. I think when you're right about the brain fog, because many people that I try to talk to when I'm out who are absolutely convinced that plants are the way to go and meat is murder and all that sort of stuff, I don't seem to be able to converse in any logical way. So, for instance, one of the things I often say is, but you are killing animals, because pesticides are sprayed on fruit and veg. I used to grow fruit and veg, and it was like Fort Knox. They're like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, well, I'm talking in a way that we can converse about the fact that you are killing animals as well. They don't want to know. So maybe that brain fog, or maybe that maybe you are carnivore because you have that response, because you are somebody that thinks properly. Could be the other way around. The only way you become carnivore is being open-minded. Yes, I think we're in a space where we all want to help each other. My first question today was, have you got your 100,000 subscribers first? Because I'm interested in a human being doing well. That's it. I'm interested in that. Now, if someone came to me and said, I'm vegan and I'm thriving, I would just go, great, good for you. I hope that's the case in 5 years. If it isn't, come back to me. If it is, don't. Live and let live. If something works for you, do it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the big. I feel that's one of the big differences between vegans and carnivores. If a vegan said, "I'm thriving," you go, "Yeah, good on you." Keep going then if it works for you. But then if a carnivore goes to a vegan and says, "I'm carnivore, I'm doing awesome," the vegan's going to do everything in their power to convince you that meat is murder, right? Okay, we've got a few more questions here. Freeze, drop the donut, hands in the air. Okay. Christelle, how long can it take for glucose levels to come down on carnivore?
Well, it depends where you are in the first place. So, for instance, I was low carb, then I was keto, and then I was carnivore. So 2 years low carb, 3 years keto. As soon as I went to carnivore, if I'd have gone straight from the standard American diet to carnivore, I don't know. Normalization, so just broadly speaking, normalization of glycogen levels is normally 1 to 2 weeks. So when I say normalization, that means that you're not depleted, you've not got too much, so you're storing incoming glucose as fat. So if you look at the mechanism, well, so what happens with, let's look at it more logically, right? So what happens when you're eating carbohydrates? Okay, you eat a carbohydrate, and your body, like we say, it wants about a teaspoon of sugar in 5 liters of blood. But it also wants to keep that energy you put into it, because the body's pretty smart. So it tries to store it in your muscles and muscle glycogen, which is good, or it store it in the liver. But both of those two things are finite for a good reason, because you don't want too much of that in those organs, or in that muscle, because that's damaging. So we know that glycation and high levels of blood glucose too much. So what does it do? It puts it into fat. That is what happens. It's that simple. All right. So somebody that's, say, surfing 4 hours a day would burn all that off. So someone like Paul Saladino would burn that off because of that high level of exercise. But that's still not stopping the glycation, by the way. There's still going to be glycation happening. Right. Anyway, so to answer your question, that's why it's important what happened before, because I would say looking at diabetic numbers, it takes about a month to see a real sort of noticeable, every single day blood glucose being really good, like a reduction of 20 to 40 milligrams per deciliter. But you could be super insulin sensitive, you could be super fit, or which it might be quicker, or you could have come to it and you're very unfit, so it'll be a lot slower. Fine tuning, the body fine tunes about 3 to 6 months, and I think after 6 months on carnivore, irrespective of your background, things should be going where they should be. And that does not mean reading a number. That means how you feel, your energy, your vision, your sleep, your mental clarity, your aches and pains. All of those should all be fine. Yes, you can look at your symptoms. Are you constantly thirsty? Are you constantly urinating? Has that gone? If you are diabetic, for instance, do you need to come off your diabetic meds with the, working in tandem with your physician? That's probably a thing that you would need to do, because your blood glucose won't go as high on carnivore. Just a fact. Is just a fact. But we don't know what your background insulin is doing. That's the thing. So that's the big thing, going full circle to how we started. You can have what you think is brilliant blood glucose numbers, but you could have incredibly chronically elevated insulin making that happen. So you could have like insulin levels of 20 or 30 or something, not know that that's happening because you're just looking at your CGM, you're just doing your finger pricking and think, oh, that's pretty good. Look at that. 98 milligrams per deciliter. Hunky dory. This is fantastic. Actually, your body is really struggling in the background. So this is why I think when you do any blood testing, sadly, you can't do this instantly on the hoof. You have to go and get this blood draw. I would do fasted insulin, fasted glucose, C-peptide. C-peptide is like the proxy marker of the production of insulin. Insulin degrades really quickly in your bloodstream, so it's not a great measure compared to C-peptide, which hangs around a bit longer. So there's a vesicle that insulin comes out of, and insulin comes out, and so does C-peptide, and off they go in their own merry way. So that's why that's a good marker of how much insulin you're producing, and that will give you some idea. You could also do a DiPo-IR, which is looking at your fatty acid efficiency, how good you metabolize your fats. But yeah, to answer your question, 6 months and you should be there. It could be earlier, could be a month. And I've had people reverse their type 2 diabetes in 3 weeks. So, and off their meds with their doctor's permission. So yeah, can be really quick.
Yeah. Thank you, Stephen, and thank you for your question. Okay. There's a lot of questions today. Mr. Beaumont, humans are obligate carnivores, and my life would improve exponentially. But I'm so unfathomably addicted to sugar carbs since infancy that I struggle with discipline getting started. Advice? All right. Shall I take this one? Given you've been you've answered a lot of questions, so give you a rest for a second. So here's what I would do, because I have gone through my whole life as a person unfathomably addicted to carbs and sugar, and just have never been able to give it up. I could eat loaves of bread when I was a kid, in one, a loaf of bread in one sitting, and I would still be looking for the next loaf of bread. I think the best way to do this is the same way you would if you were trying to get off alcohol, and it's just do it a day at a time. And one of the things that is really, I feel personally, is really difficult about addiction is it's very easy to talk yourself out of trying to get out of that addiction if you think about the long term. So if you think about, how am I going to do without sugar and carbs for the rest of my life, it's very easy to start talking yourself out of that. It's much easier if you just focus on, I'm going to not have sugar and carbs today and just get through today. And then the next day, just focus on getting through that day. and then the same the next day, and the same the next day, and just keep doing that. And if you have a slip up somewhere along the line, don't beat yourself up about it. Don't stand in the corner smacking your head against the wall or anything like that. Just go, okay, I messed up, back on the wagon. And what happens when you do it that way is that every day when you wake up, your resolve increases a little bit, and you just get a little bit stronger. And that helps you get through the following day. But, no one's perfect. So you are going to have those moments where you either slip up or something slips into your food that you didn't think was there, right? You go to a dinner party, you think you're eating clean, and then you realize they marinated the beef they're giving you in sugar. Things happen. So just get straight back on the wagon. And every time you get back on the wagon and you feel like, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it again, your resolve goes up a notch, and then you get less paranoid about the times when you are going to slip in future. So I would do it that way. Don't worry about the long term. Focus on a day at a time.
Mm. Well, that's very like AA, isn't it? Like the Alcoholics
Yes.
Anonymous way. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's brilliant, Dave. That's great advice. And that I tend to say to people about this way of eating as well. Don't compare yourself to anyone else. Just be better than you were the day before.
Yes.
Don't worry about
That's really good advice, because
Mm.
that's one of the worst things we do as humans, is always kind of go, yeah, I've got a pretty good result, but it's not as good as his, or it's not as good as hers. And then you start smacking yourself and going, oh, well, I'm useless.
Yes. I mean, it's all about how your frame of reference is. So if I was to tell people, and this is where numbers, right? I'm going to use this. This isn't a humble brag. It's actually to show you how numbers can really make things sound good or bad. All right. Do you realize that I am in the top 1.3% of the world when it comes to YouTube content creators? I'm in the top 1.3%. Do you know where that puts me? That puts me at 1,500,000th in the list. Right. So, and Dave, you've got 100,000 subscribers, 3 times as much as me. You're probably in the top 1%. But people don't realize.
But I'm still at like probably 1.49 million or something.
So these numbers, we've got to get the context right. So if your bloods are 100, and I'm trying to circle back, if your bloods are 120 milligrams per deciliter, remember that someone diabetic might be 200 or 300, so you are doing better than a lot of people. You're not doing as well, inverted commas, as the person that's at 98 milligrams per deciliter. But we can game all these numbers. George Cahill did an experiment to see what's the lowest level of blood glucose that we require. And he fasted people 30, 60, 90 days, and also added insulin to them, by the way, and dropped their blood glucose to 27 milligrams per deciliter, like 1 millimole, and they had no ill effects. But do you want to be doing that? We don't know whether long-term that was a problem. So we know from 30, 60, 90 days, and it just proved the concept that you can have very low blood glucose, have no ill effects. But could you do that for a year? I don't think so, because I think you need your amino acids and your fatty acids. If your bloods are at 120, we want to find out why. So you should do those bloods. You should find out your fasted insulin, your C-peptide, your fasted glucose. Maybe do the adipo-IR test, which is like the fatty acid metabolism. We want to see what you're doing there as well. And get a better picture of what's going on. Or you could be incredibly low level of insulin, but your glucose transporters might be working to a maximum on the concentration gradient of glucose. If you've not got the symptoms, if your vision is good, you're sleeping well, your energy is fine, maybe that's the level that's appropriate for you at this moment. And as you do this, as I said, the longer you do this, more insulin sensitive you are. You could maybe not be exercising, for instance. You could go for long walks. You could do a little bit of high intensity interval training. and you will improve the glucose entry to cells using 4 mechanisms that aren't insulin dependent. So there's lots and lots of things you can do. But yeah, I think what you just said about the carb addiction, all this is all well and good, but if you can't do it, you've got a problem. So if you're addicted to carbs, you know, and you've been fighting that, the worst thing in the world is start eating them again. You know, you because of some number. I think that's the thing that we need to get to. Eating carbs can bring back the addictions. Eating carbs will increase your glycation. Eating fruit will, well, you know, one of the things we know about fruit is it's got fructose, and the liver knows that is 7 to 11 times more glycating than glucose. So when fructose hits the liver, it immediately adds a phosphate to it, and it makes a thing called phosphate, fructose 1-phosphate. Phosphate, ATP, is adenosine triphosphate, 3 phosphates. The liver has to give up its energy supply to put that phosphate onto a fructose to stop it glycating. So your concentration of energy for your liver goes down when you eat fruit. You know, so there's lots of things that show. So you can use facts of biochemistry, or you can use real life examples. And my thing here with Mr. Beaumont, I wonder if he's a Friends fan. You know, there was the Mr. Beaumont, wasn't there? The boat that they won. Anyway, if you're living in the real world and you're struggling with carbohydrates, the last thing you want to do is game a number by adding carbohydrates. So this person here needs to not touch them. You know, so this is a person that can't moderate. This is an abstainer. So all these nuances are really, really important. I never recommend anyone add carbs back in, because I think all of those things apply. They could be somebody that's triggered and gets addicted. They could be someone that has to abstain. They can't moderate. I don't want extra glycation happening. I don't want them to age quicker than they should, because that's one of the things I'd say with Paul Saladino, for instance. But I love him, by the way. I've got his book, but he is eating a lot of fructose and a lot of carbohydrate, and I think he is aging. So what we was talking about glycation of collagen earlier, I think that's showing up a little bit in his face. Personally, that's what I think. So yeah, discipline. We want to get away from discipline, and we want it to become a habit, don't we? So the more you do a good thing, the easier it becomes. And I think it's like 6 to 8 weeks before it becomes a habit.
Yeah.
And I'm going to add to that. Many people talk about the rat study, where the rats were given sugar and cocaine, because there's a bit they always miss out. Right. So they were giving sugar to rats to see how much sugar they were eating, and then they gave them the option of cocaine, and they were very surprised because the rats chose sugar over cocaine. And many people say that proves that sugar is 5 times more addictive, but actually it doesn't show that, because also they studied giving those rats things to do, and when they had an environment that wasn't like a lab, but actually something that they could investigate and move around in, and do natural things, they didn't do the cocaine or the sugar. So Mr. Beaumont, you need to find another thing. Maybe, I'm not saying you're a dirty rat, you dirty rat, I'm just saying you need to maybe look at a different reward as well. So what I did, when I first started this way of eating, I'd go to the cinema, and of course I'd want a big hot dog, and I want a great big Coke, because that's what I always did, because that was my treat. Even though I was a high carb athlete, once every 2 months I go to the cinema, and that's what I fancied: hot dog and a Coke. I'll be all right, that's fine. And that was really deeply ingrained. So once I went low carb, every time I went to the cinema, there's nothing worth seeing now, by the way, but anyway, when I went to the cinema, I'd be like, oh, I fancy a Coke, I fancy a hot dog. So I had to do an alternative, which was have a bottle of water already, and bacon that was cooked up and cut up into little bits and in a little Ziploc bag. So that became my new thing. And I really enjoyed, oh boy, I love the bacon so much. I tell you what, I'd have that over everything. So I've taught myself a new reward system. So it isn't all about just saying, I'm not doing that. It's like, well, let's be realistic. Let's have an alternative, because I need this new activity. And the more you do that, the more helpful that becomes as well. Sorry, I've gone over time, haven't I, mate? Sorry.
No worries. Thanks, Mr. Beaumont. So We've got one more question here, so let's go through this question and then maybe we wrap up for today. So from Christelle, my husband has type 2 diabetes. He ate low carb the last year, now carnivore for a month. His glucose is still 120 to 140 most of the day.
Right. Okay. He ate low carb the last year, now carnivore for a month. His glucose is still 120 to 140. Right. Okay. So the problem there is they're still worried about it being too high, I'm assuming. And I can understand that, really. When it says most of the day, I wouldn't mind knowing when that is, because that would be really interesting to know the answer to. Is it first thing in the morning? Is that after a meal? Is that is so when are we doing that?
Because it's going to be higher at those times, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I would ask that person, can they get a continual glucose monitor? That's the first thing. So we could look at what's going on. Secondly, I would look at what amount of food they're eating. And I would say, when they're carnivore, are they having a lot of dairy? Are they having a lot of cheese? Are they, mixing up their meals? If someone came to me and wanted to do a consultation, I would not be overly worried about those numbers, but I'd want to have a bit more context. So I'd want to know when you're taking it. If you're doing it with a finger pricker, capillary testing, for instance, I would do it 30 minutes before you're eating. And I know it's going to cost you a bit of money on strips, but it's a good way of working out what's going on. And then once you've eaten, I would do it 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 90 minutes, 2 hours afterwards, because I want to see what the shape is of the, before the meal, then going up. And then what happens afterwards? Is it like a nice curve down, or do you get a huge spike that stays up for a long time? Because then we can sort of guess what's going on. So it could be insulin sensitivity. And then you could sort of biohack it a little bit by doing the same thing the next day at the same time, the same meal, the same thing. And you could eat your food and then go and walk up and down the stairs and prove concept, because you will be making those GLUT4 transporters translocate more to the cell membranes, and the uptake of glucose would go into your cells. Only do this if this is safe for your husband. I mean, if someone's uncertain about how much exercise they can do, that's a different matter. And then if you prove the concept, so let's say day one, you do it, you don't add any activity and it's 140. And the next day, after 2 hours, it's 140. And the next day, you add a little bit of walking up and down the stairs or going for a walk for 20 minutes, and it's 110. We know that activity is going to be the key to get your blood glucose down and get those GLUT4 transporters mobilized. But the more you do that, the less you need to do. Once you become trained, once you have that physiological response, that trained individual will keep a really good low level of insulin sensitivity. So it wouldn't be a case of like you're going out for a meal with your friends and you have to say, excuse me, I've got to go and do 20 squats in the toilet. You would be pretty sensitive. You would have fine-tuned your body. But yeah, I just need a bit more detail than that.
So someone just commented there about potentially it could be a cortisol problem. Could cortisol impact it this way? Like, let's say someone's doing stuff that's raising their cortisol a lot throughout the day, drinking coffee or extreme stress or something like that. Could that raise it?
Oh, Dave, yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is the thing. So you're getting into the fight, flight, or freeze response. Cortisol is there for a good reason. Everyone thinks it's a bad player in the body. No, there's no bad players. There's always like chronically elevated or inappropriately elevated. But yes, cortisol can do that. So if you look at the fight and flight response, and we'll tap into anxiety as well, and coffee. So anything that is stimulating the adrenals coffee being one, anything, caffeine, anything that triggers the fight, flight, or freeze response is going to put your blood glucose up. Now, that makes total sense, but that also will make you insulin resistant. I hate that term, but people understand it, and let me explain why. Forget all what we just said. Let's talk about the fight or flight freeze response. So a tiger walks into my room. Firstly, anxiety. Anxiety is a physiological gold mine. It's a really good thing, because without anxiety, I'd look at that tiger and I go, oh, it's a tiger in your room.
He's cute.
Yeah. So I go, oh, wow, I've got to either fight this thing, run away, or freeze, because maybe it won't see me. All right. So they're my choices. So let's say I want to run away. What do I need? I need plenty of blood glucose. I need my muscles pumped full of blood glucose. So that's what cortisol will do. It will absolutely upregulate the gluconeogenic response, and it will pump blood glucose into my body. And it wants the elevated blood glucose. So what else happens? Well, when it comes from cortisol, it will actually stop insulin's effect of putting blood glucose into the cell. Doesn't that make sense straight away?
Yeah.
Because what's the point of having something that puts your blood glucose up and immediately stops it? So when you get the blood glucose elevation from cortisol, and the body's smart, it knows what's going on, because cortisol is a signaling molecule. It's hey guys, it's a problem, right? So insulin knows that as well. So it keeps your blood glucose up. So when you do that with coffee, that's still doing that same pathway. It's still like triggering the adrenals to do that. So let's carry on. So then I run away, run up a tree, and I have a rest, and everything normalizes. Well, when you have coffee or any stress in your life, let's say it's your boss, you can't run away from your boss and hide up a tree. You can't punch your boss. So that anxiety level is still, still there.
So it's constant.
Yeah. And this is where you get this chronically elevated cortisol, or why you do a diurnal cortisol test with saliva over the period of time, because you want to see that curve. You want to see that, in the morning it's high. So this is another thing. This is the dawn phenomena. Cortisol is used to wake you up, because again, going back to the primal time, you don't want some tribesman like, oh, I don't want to get up. You want to try, whoa, I'm up. I've got to go and get some food, and I've got to protect my clan because there's animals trying to eat me. So that makes sense as well. Once you eat, see, this is where eating actually can be detrimental. This is why breakfast could be a problem for some people. All those natural hormones you immediately cut into. Well, no hunter-gatherer, the lady of the tribe didn't wake up and go, oh, someone's made me breakfast. How nice. That never happened. All right. So it's all natural. So eating breakfast first thing can be a game changer in this situation with the type 2 diabetes, managing stress. It's but this is why I like doing lives, because the people that watch these lives are fantastic, and they know their stuff. So you've got a good tribe here, mate. You really have, and hopefully that came from either one of yours or one of mine. So it's good.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's all the questions we got. So for everyone that's tuned in, really appreciate you being with us and putting your questions in, and just chatting while we're going through everything. Thank you very much. And Stephen, any final things from you?
No, I just want to thank people for tuning in and asking the questions, and it's been interesting looking at the chats, because it's nice to see the backwards and forwards in the chat, people helping each other out. So yeah, I love it. And I'm so glad you got to 100,000.
Oh, cheers. Cheers. Thank you.
Can I say, Sean Baker's blood glucose went up to 200 milligrams per deciliter when he sprinted. And my co-host Richard Smith, when we do our lives every Sunday at 7 p.m. UK time, it's from State Control Britain, he's always talking about his blood glucose going up when he exercises. So let's look at context rather than just the number.
That's very, very good advice. Look at the context, not just the number. Yeah. Thank you very much for joining us, guys. Really appreciate it. See you next time.